Hey everyone, so we just got the most insane chapter of One Piece that we've had in a very long time. The main reason being, I don't think I can recall a time in One Piece where we've had this sort of outside the Straw Hat perspective cutaway between two prominent, significant characters in the world, and it concludes in a single one-shot where one of two said characters is seemingly permanently removed from the story. Whether or not that is actually the case, whether or not Kid is gone forever, whether or not this truly is the end of the Kid Pirates, as the narrator says, that is its own discussion that we're going to be diving into. But man, we have to talk about the potential ramifications of what happens to Kid, as well as how Oda has been writing Shanks recently. And of course, we got to touch a little bit about what's going on in Egghead Island. But honestly, the scene between Shanks and Kid was more than I think anyone could have imagined, because many people thought that Shanks would win. Many people thought that if Shanks won, it would likely be off screen. Many people thought that we might get to see a glimpse of the fight, with maybe Kid doing moderately well before Shanks defeats him. But I don't think anybody had this on their bingo card. I don't think anybody truly believed that Shanks would simply swoop in and in a single move destroy Kid, wiping Kid out while Kid is using his own strongest move and destroying Kid's entire crew in one fell swoop. This is just unheard of. And I know that speaking of Shanks, you all can't stop looking at who I've got in the background right now, and that's because I've got some good news for you. That absolutely striking image of Shanks back there, practically radiating Conqueror's Haki, well, that could be yours. You can get this poster of the most hype man in One Piece for yourself or a friend today through the Morge store. This piece is by artist Abood, and it's a very high quality poster with museum grade paper and pigmented archival ink, meaning the poster's colors are bright and intense and will never fade away. Again, get it for yourself today through the Morge store. Just hit the link in the description below. So that aside, let's quickly talk about what's going on at Egghead Island before we get to the main stuff. Egghead Island, we get some elaboration on York. I think that York is shaping up to be a very interesting villain. An important point was noted right here that York herself is not that strong. I think that is good to know, just so that theories of, York potentially joining the Blackbeard Pirates or York being a final boss that needs to be physically defeated are kind of out the window. York is a mastermind. As for where her story direction goes, I think there's so many possibilities at this point that I think it's a great addition to the Egghead Island arc, which was kind of heading in a very almost predictable direction where we knew that it's going to come down to the Marines, probably Luffy versus Kizaru, or some of the Strats versus Kizaru or something like that. But York and their control over the Seraphim in particular throws a wrench into everything that makes a lot of moving parts and moving variables. Speaking of which, the Blackbeard Pirates showing up, that is something that has been speculated on in the past. I talked about it back in the video where I was speculating on who the Egghead Island killer could be. Obviously, it's not Blackbeard that's the Egghead Island killer, but why Blackbeard is swooping in right now? Well, there's a myriad of possibilities. One, Blackbeard is just purely opportunistic. He seems to show up at almost any place where it seems like he has something that he could potentially gain. Obviously, Whole Cake Island, when it was missing a Yonko, that was free pickings for him. Amazon Lily, he went right after that. Law seems, maybe a little bit out in the open, prone to being picked off and having some road poneglyphs stolen from him. Blackbeard's there. It's even pointed out this chapter that Shanks was surprised that Blackbeard did not show up to Wano. Why is that surprising? Because, well, that's just a place that you would expect Blackbeard to be. That's exactly his modus operandi. So the fact that Blackbeard is showing up at Egghead Island, it's not surprising. It may not even mean that there's some sort of grand scheme behind it. It may just be Blackbeard sending some of his men to try and pick up what he can before the chaos at Egghead Island blows up. And in the moments before maybe the Marines arrive or before the conflict gets really out of hand and it turns into a whole war, maybe Blackbeard is just looking to have his men pick up and steal whatever they can steal from Vegapunk's labs. Now, the other possibility is simply that there's something in particular that Blackbeard is coming from. That could be Jewelry Bonnie. Some people have suggested from my last stream that Bonnie might be used to come age Pudding up a little bit so that Pudding will be able to use her eye, which is the key, I assume, to Blackbeard being able to read poneglyphs in the future, so that's a possibility right there. It could be that Blackbeard is in cahoots with York, and, York is trying to fall back on some backup plan, and she seems to not be a stupid character. She has backup plans. So maybe Blackbeard is some sort of route to York, or York is some sort of route to getting more information or something to Blackbeard. That's definitely a possibility. And then finally, maybe Blackbeard is coming for the Seraphim, because as I discussed in a previous video, again about the potential Egghead Island killer, the Seraphim, that's something that caught Blackbeard's attention definitely during the Amazon Lily fight. So if Blackbeard has interest in that, he sees Egghead Island as a sinking ship, he might be going in to see if there's anything that he could do with the Seraphim because he doesn't know the full details about them yet. The bigger question is not so much why Blackbeard is going, so much as how he will affect the plot. And again, I should clarify, I actually don't think that Blackbeard himself will necessarily show up. I think that Blackbeard is likely to be he's more likely to be encountering Garp, right, at Hachinosu. But I do think that the ship showing up there, right, indicates that the Blackbeard pirates will have some role to play that shapes or shifts the direction of the arc in an unexpected direction, because I think one of the biggest things you can always give Blackbeard props for as a villain is that he shakes things up in a direction that we are not expecting. I think every time he shows up on screen, I think every single time, it's always been to throw some sort of twist that nobody realized the story was going for, right? So that's something I always appreciate about Blackbeard as a villain, but enough about all that. Let's talk about Shanks and Kid. Shanks is right now the single most hyped up character in One Piece. That doesn't mean I'm saying he's the strongest. Well, Mihawk fans, stop typing away or whatever. I'm saying who at this point in the story is being given the most attention, the most build up, the most what we call colloquially hype, right? It is Shanks. From the moment Wano ended and Green Bull was sent running away to right now where Shanks is one-shotting Kid, a character that many believed was stronger than, Yonko First Mates. Some people had Kid almost at Admiral level and such. I personally didn't, but some people did. Shanks one-shotted him. That's an absurd feat that I think is almost never, there hasn't been anything comparable that's ever happened in the One Piece story as far as I can remember. Because to put things really into perspective, Big Mom even said, Big Mom went up against Marco briefly, and obviously Big Mom is significantly stronger than Marco, but even Big Mom acknowledged that, hey, I can't deal with you that easily. I can't just take you out in one go. You're not worth the trouble right now. Let me leave you alone. Kid is someone that many had started to believe was even stronger than characters like Marco, just based on how the whole Big Mom fight and everything went. And Shanks just took him out. And there was no excuses. That was the brilliant part. Oda had it established beforehand that Kid seems to be in perfectly good health. He's not recovering from any fight or anything like that. Kid is the one who's pulling out his strongest attack right away, so there's no excuses. It's not like Kid didn't have anything left up his sleeves, right? He was using a railgun. He was using the move that he used to finish off Big Mom. Okay, I'm exaggerating right there. Kid did not finish off Big Mom with the railgun, but it was his big finisher attempt move against Big Mom, right? Shanks and by the way, the railgun seemed strong. It wiped out basically in the future sight vision Shanks saw, it wiped out the entire fleet of ships, which is fairly impressive, but not nearly as impressive as what Shanks did, obviously. So here's the crazy sequence of events that we got, okay? Shanks, first of all, confirmed future sight user, saw the future, right? And not only did he see the future, he saw an extended look at the future. This has always been one of my things with Future Sight in One Piece, which is that I feel that it's a cool concept, but usually we have to be told when characters are using it because it's not communicated very well through the story, I feel. Because when characters are seeing the future, we're not getting to see the visions that they're seeing, right? We're simply told that they saw some sort of a vision and they're acting on it. But the closest we ever really saw that I can recall is at the wedding between Sanji and Pudding, Katakuri was able to see, Pudding falling over, right? We saw a little bit of a vision of that. That's a far cry from what we just saw from Shanks. I'm not saying Shanks is a better Future Sight user than Katakuri, but I think it's very, very interesting to me that the first time we're getting a true instance of what I feel like I and many would hope that Future Sight's actual portrayal in the story would be like, which is actually the reader getting to see extended visions of the future playing out before a character's eyes, before the character is able to step in and stop that future from happening. I think that this is the first time we truly saw something that lives up to that ideal of what Future Sight is, and it's so exciting to see because Shanks seemingly saw well ahead into the future. It didn't feel like just, a second or two. He saw the full extended sequence of what's going to happen to his men, to his fleet. He saw the full thing and then acted well ahead of time. That's crazy because it just makes you think about so many characters that would be, helpless against Shanks in the story because Shanks is clearly able to see many seconds ahead, many steps ahead, and know exactly how a full move is gonna play out. It's pretty crazy. Not to mention he has supposedly a reputation as the killer of observation haki, so he can cancel out other people's observation haki. It's a whole thing, right? But that's not even the biggest deal. The biggest deal is obviously the Divine Departure attack. Look, it's no secret that Shanks is kind of being built up as the modern day Roger. He was Roger's successor. He had Roger's hat, right? He was the one looking for Roger's natural successor himself, who we found in Luffy. He's kind of the guy in between two eras, keeping the peace between Roger's era till the era of the next Pirate King, which is Luffy. And he's playing that, he's essentially cosplaying Roger phenomenally well, right? The Divine Departure attack, everything Roger's doing down to a T. And the crazy part is that's probably not even Shanks' strongest attack, considering Divine Departure I don't think was Roger's strongest attack, right? I doubt that Roger pulled out his strongest move against Odin or whatever, especially when Odin was clearly not at his level. So this felt more like a moment where, Kaido used Thunder Bagua against Luffy in Act 1. Obviously Shanks, let's assume Kid is a bit ahead of where Luffy was at that point in time, but the result was ultimately the same. I just can't imagine any, we saw Big Mom couldn't just take out Kid like that. I don't think Kaido could take out Kid like that right now. Maybe Kaido could if he was in hybrid form or drunk, whatever mode or whatever, going out like that. But this just felt very different. It felt like the most dominant display we've ever seen from a character, a top tier character like Shanks, against a character that should be contending for close to the very top of the One Piece world, if not right verging on that level, right? So to say that Shanks has been basically Oda's golden boy for this last stretch of the story, right, this final saga, I think is an understatement. It doesn't help that Film Red was also the last One Piece movie that came out, so there's a lot that's been riding on Shanks recently. And obviously a lot of this is hype and build up for Shanks being probably the main obstacle of Elbaf that Luffy's gonna have to go up against, and not to mention we're gonna get a lot more hype for Shanks probably leading up to Blackbeard ultimately taking him down, which would give a lot more weight to Blackbeard and, Blackbeard strengthen the story by the time it comes for Luffy to fight Blackbeard, right? I think we can still assume that Blackbeard is going to defeat Shanks, but man, I just don't think anybody really had this, and the few insights that we got from Shanks and the way his fleet functions and everything like that in this chapter was also really great to see as well. It confirms many things. One, I don't think Shanks is evil because we got to see the inner workings of his mind. Let's let that theory be put to rest at this point. We got to see how exactly he thinks, and he really does genuinely want to protect his crew, and he wants to avoid violence if possible. He wants to keep the peace. He will act only if he sees great violence is about to happen that needs to be prevented, right? That's Shanks. It lives up to our image of Shanks. It just all kind of confirms that that's who he is and that's what he cares about, right? Also learning that his fleet is actually remarkably weak. I think that is a great touch, because I was getting used to the idea that, okay, Shanks is like these other emperors and like Luffy, who has this fleet of strong subordinates underneath him. I kind of always thought Shanks was more of an easygoing guy rather than having this really strong military force, but I guess not. Turns out that initial assumption is kind of correct. Shanks is an easygoing guy. All of these fleet members, they're more so for show. Shanks is just protecting them, right? They rely on him way more than he relies on them, and he's really taking care of them in a sense. It feels Whitebeard-esque, the way that Whitebeard, took in Sons and everything like that, but Whitebeard's fleets were also strong military forces, whereas Shanks's are outright stated to be weak. So I really like that dynamic. The last thing we do have to talk about is, of course, Captain Kidd. Alright, the thing about Kidd is this. I have a full video coming out on him, most likely next Tuesday. Most likely next week, right? The next week's video is either on Shanks or Kidd. There's 2 drafts I'm playing with, but it's looking like it's gonna be about Kidd. Here's the thing about Kidd. I can't say everything I want to say about him here because the most extensive points need to really be hammered in full video scripted format. But I feel as though the crazy thing is, from the sentiments that I've been seeing from people, will he get back up? Will he not get back up? Is this a setup for him to have a character arc, get stronger, realize something, make a change? The craziest thing is that most people don't even care. The fact is that avenue is still open, right? What happened to the Kid Pirates right now, it seems like a hard parallel to what happened to the Strats at Sabaody, and we all know what that led to for the Strats, which was reformation, growth, lesson learned, getting stronger, coming back way more competent and capable, right? Maybe Kid comes back as a strong rival with a new crew, a better crew, right? Maybe Kid comes back with a lesson learned. But the thing is, so many readers have just waited so long for this character to do anything, and this was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. People don't care anymore. People are done with him. That's not to say, if Oda's cooking up something with Kid, look, I'm personally still here for it. But if it's the end of the show for him, if that's it, if that's sayonara, he's out of here, I don't care that much about it anyway. That was the way it went. The one thing I'll say is that if this really is the end of the story for him, if this is the end of the line, then I would love if we could retroactively just go back and remove him from Wano, because he was a super unnecessary screen time hog, spotlight taker. He just why even have that storyline in the already bloated Wano arc if it's to just build up some false hype, false hope, honestly really shaky hype, because people were critical of Kid even at that point, even while he was up against Big Mom and everything like that. Why even waste the time and space writing stuff in for him and continuing to play up this charade of, Kid being a rival of Luffy's and everything like that, and they have the same bounty, and it felt like such a joke the entire time, and now it just feels confirmed to have been a big joke. Just feels like retroactively the Wano arc would have been way better if Law was the only one around there, right? So either way, we got two paths, two forks, two paths diverged. You know the poem, right? But two roads diverged. People don't really care either way is the crazy part with Kid, which is one, either this is the end of the line for him, and that's it. Some people are happy he's gone. I just wish retroactively we could have taken him out of some more things. Or two, he actually gets some stuff and maybe it's even good, but no one's looking forward to it. No one's anticipating or really excited for the rebirth of Captain Kidd. Unless Oda's got something absolutely kooky and crazy and exciting cooked up, like Kidd turns out to be the son of rocks or something like that, and he awakens as Advanced Conquerors Haki, and bam, we got a new exciting villain in the story. I don't see that happening personally, but you never know. So all that being said, let me give a shout out to the Voice of the People, which is my top tier of community patrons. So today's most liked community voice is from Stephen Bracano. We talked about the first point that he mentions, which is the similarities between this event and the Subodhi event. So what I'm going to talk about is the second point he made, which is that the first arc of the final saga, which is obviously Egghead Island, this arc, establishes how devil fruits equal desires/dreams, and how desire can be evil. And Blackbeard, who is coincidentally about to show his hand this arc, Blackbeard embodies both devil fruit powers and dreams. That's a really interesting idea, in that, Blackbeard represents dreams he has from the start of the story, but it's always felt a little bit more evil and malicious than how Luffy represents it. And interestingly, Blackbeard's entire power set seems to be very devil fruit reliant, right? Very desire, he's using the power of other people's desires and dreams, I suppose, to fuel himself. So symbolically, he makes for a very, very interesting villain, and I am excited to see that he's becoming more and more prominent in Egghead Island, likely because Shanks is about to become much more important with Elbaf, and we know that a collision course between Shanks and Blackbeard has already been set. So, very excited for both those two characters coming up. And of course, if you're excited for Shanks, if Shanks was hyped to you this chapter, then make sure to get the poster in the back for yourself from the Mord store today. The link is in the description below.